Imagine a Roman commander, shrouded in thick fog, moving cautiously through the treacherous forests of Germania. The silence is suffocating until suddenly a war cry shatters the stillness. Shadows shift between the trees. An ambush is about to unfold. But this time, unlike the massacre under Varus years earlier, Rome is ready. This time, Rome has Germanicus. The Germanic tribes were Rome's worst nightmare. Ferocious, unpredictable, and masters of their terrain. In the past, Rome had suffered humiliating defeats in these lands. But Germanicus wasn't here to repeat history. He came to rewrite it, to change the way Rome fought, to take revenge on those who once dared to challenge the empire. His soldiers weren't just fighting a war, they were reclaiming Rome's honor with blood. But how did Germanicus turn the tide against warriors who thrived on ambush tactics and asymmetric warfare? How did he modernize Roman strategy to crush an enemy that seemed invincible in its own homeland? What most people don't realize is that Germanicus didn't just adapt to the brutal conditions of Germania. He introduced military innovations that defied traditional Roman doctrine. If his tactics had been fully embraced, the fate of Rome's northern frontier could have been radically different. But why weren't his changes widely adopted? And what lasting impact did his campaigns have on the empire's future? In today's video, we'll dive deep into the brilliant strategies of Germanicus, break down the battles that reshaped warfare on the Rhine, and uncover how his tactical genius could have changed the course of Roman history. You'll discover the secrets behind his military brilliance, the challenges he faced, and the mysteries that still surround his tragic fate. If you love exploring the minds of Rome's greatest strategists and understanding how their decisions shaped empires, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. It helps spread these incredible stories and keeps the history alive. Now, get ready to step onto the battlefield with Germanicus. When Germanicus set foot in Germania, he wasn't just leading another Roman campaign. He was rewriting the empire's entire approach to warfare. The disaster of Teutoburg Forest had left Rome humiliated, its mighty legions crushed by an enemy they barely understood. But instead of blindly charging into battle for revenge, Germanicus took a different route. He studied the terrain, the weather, and most importantly, the enemy itself. He knew that the tribes thrived in chaos, using the dense forests as both a shield and a weapon. To win, Rome couldn't just rely on brute force. It needed to adapt, to fight the enemy on its own terms while reshaping the battlefield in Rome's favor. Germanicus turned Germania's unpredictable landscape into a controlled war zone. He deployed engineers to carve paths through the forests, created fortified supply routes, and used the rivers to transport troops rapidly, something unheard of in previous campaigns. But perhaps his most audacious move was psychological. He didn't just fight battles. He dictated when and where they happened. This shift forced the Germanic tribes into situations they weren't prepared for. Yet, despite his strategic brilliance, one undeniable problem remained. No matter how many victories he secured, the enemy never seemed to vanish. And that raised a much bigger question. Was Rome actually winning the war? Or was it just fighting a ghost that refused to die? Each triumph reinforced Rome's military dominance, but it also revealed a troubling truth. Germanicus was playing a game that had no clear end. The more victories he achieved, the more the Germanic tribes simply melted away into the wilderness, only to regroup and strike again. Unlike Rome, which depended on fortified cities and fixed supply chains, the tribes had no permanent capitals, no central government to crush. They were an enemy that couldn't be cornered, no matter how many times they were defeated in open battle. This paradox frustrated not just Germanicus, but also his soldiers, who had marched deep into enemy lands expecting a decisive war, not an endless cycle of skirmishes and retreats. Back in Rome, the Senate and Emperor Tiberius were growing uneasy. The war was costly, and its benefits were becoming harder to justify. Germanicus had reclaimed the Lost Eagles, destroyed countless enemy strongholds, and avenged Rome's disgrace. But what had really changed? The legions had proven their might, yet Germania remained untamed, its people unwilling to submit. Germanicus needed a new strategy, one that didn't just focus on military victories, but on something far more insidious: the destruction of the enemy's very will to resist. But how do you conquer a people who refuse to be conquered? The answer lay not on the battlefield, but in the mind. Germanicus realized that crushing the enemy physically wasn't enough. He had to break them mentally. Instead of relying solely on brute force, he turned to psychological warfare, exploiting the one thing that made the Germanic tribes strong: their unity. He spread misinformation, manipulated alliances, and fueled internal rivalries. By sowing discord among the tribes, he forced them to turn against each other, weakening their ability to resist. His most brilliant maneuver was targeting Arminius, the hero of Teutoburg. Germanicus understood that Arminius wasn't just a military leader. He was a symbol of resistance. If he could destabilize him, he could fracture the entire Germanic opposition from within. But his psychological tactics didn't stop there. He launched raids with calculated brutality, not just to destroy villages, but to send a clear message: Rome was inevitable. Entire settlements were wiped out, not just for strategic gain, but to instill fear, to make the tribes question whether resistance was worth the cost. The impact was immediate. Tribes that once stood together now hesitated, unsure of whether to keep fighting or seek Rome's favor. Germanicus was reshaping the battlefield without even drawing his sword. But just as his strategy began to take full effect, something unexpected happened. His campaign was abruptly cut short. The decision wasn't his, and the reason behind it would change everything. Despite his success, Germanicus was ordered to halt his campaign and return to Rome. The command came straight from Emperor Tiberius, who saw something far more dangerous than the Germanic tribes: Germanicus himself. His growing popularity among the troops, his unprecedented victories, and his ability to inspire absolute loyalty made him a potential threat to the imperial throne. Tiberius feared that his adopted son might become too powerful, so he pulled him back before he could achieve total victory. The conquest of Germania was abandoned, not because it was impossible, but because Rome's own politics wouldn't allow it. Germanicus left behind a legacy of military innovation, a blueprint for how Rome could have mastered asymmetric warfare. But without him, Rome lost its momentum, and the frontier remained unstable. The empire would never again attempt to conquer Germania, leaving the northern frontier forever contested. But what if Germanicus had been allowed to finish what he started? Could Rome have expanded beyond the Rhine, securing its dominance for centuries to come? Or would the Germanic resistance have only grown stronger, leading to an even greater disaster? And more importantly, what if Germanicus himself had lived long enough to claim the throne? How different would history be today? Germanicus was a military genius, but even he couldn't defy the politics of Rome. His campaign was cut short. But what if he had conquered Germania? How would Rome have sustained an occupation so deep in enemy territory? The answer lies in the backbone of the Roman war machine, their forts and supply chains. Discover how these engineering marvels kept thousands of soldiers battle-ready, even in the harshest conditions. Click here to uncover the secrets of Roman forts and their role in military dominance.